Mark Roy Larson here for the Dreamcatcher podcast. Thanks for joining us. Today, my guest is Peter Sewell from Germany. How you doing, Peter?
Hey, not too bad, mate.
Good. I've been waiting for this podcast. I'm looking forward to this podcast because you just got back from an amazing trip, and I aspire to do what you are doing. So Peter, what you're located in Germany. We'll get some basics here. So, is that where you grew up? Or is that your home country? Or
Okay, so I'm an Australian. So I
okay,
lived most of my life in Australia, and I've been based here in Germany now for about 10 years.
okay,
So my wife is German, so that was the connection that brings me here
okay,
in Germany. So we're in the east here in Leipzig, and
okay, cool.
great place. If there's any soccer fans out there, they
Uh-huh.
might know of the Leipzig Red Bull team, which have
Okay,
been doing, yeah, not too bad.
awesome. So, was a big change from going from Australia to Germany, or was there not too much?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, Australia, like huge changes. So, for a starter, we have a lot more a warmer weather where I'm from. So I'm from like the the northeast of Australia.
Okay,
A similar climate to Florida, for example,
awesome.
like so
Nice.
um, the Miami of
I would like
Australia. Yeah,
that.
I was just
Oh,
in Miami like, just last week. So, and I'm thinking always of the people that, as we're speaking, like there's a big hurricane hitting
yeah,
on the west coast there. So,
yeah,
yeah, really sad to hear.
it is.
And if there's anyone listening out there, probably the hurricane will have been and gone, but my heart goes out to you. And if and
No,
yeah,
you Yep. It's tough. That's one thing I guess where we live, we don't have those kind of storms. I told my wife if we ever get one of those in Nebraska, the weather hasn't really changed.
yeah,
So, but yeah, I do. I love Florida, and I do feel for them. And Tampa. I was in just Tampa last year, so actually, where they're talking about all that, and yeah, you just feel. I can't even imagine. I don't know if I've ever gone through anything quite like that, where you just have to pick up and or weather it out. I can't imagine doing it with those kind of winds too.
yeah.
So Peter, what did you do for a living in Australia?
Yeah, so I had a business in Australia. Well, even before that, my family had an avocado farm. So
Nice.
the first part of my life, I spent maybe about, I think it was about 16 years after I left school, just helping my parents on the avocado farm, which I
Okay.
loved. I realized that I loved the outdoors.
Yep.
And then later I realized, well, I want to be around people and kind of interact with people more. So I started a training and coaching business.
Nice.
And so that went for, I don't know, almost 10 years in Australia before I relocated to Germany.
Wow.
And it was a fabulous time. And all of those skills that I learned
Uh,
in coaching and training I applied to my wife's business here in Germany, which is a tutoring school,
nice.
and she ended up to be one of the best testimonies of my
Uh-huh.
skills.
Uh-huh.
The she doubled her income and has
Wow.
basically created a position in the business for me to be like as a consultant
Okay.
and allowed me the freedom to do a lot of traveling. So I do
Yeah.
travel a lot of traveling, about 6 months a year at the moment, which I'm
Awesome.
hoping to turn into a a career by writing a series of books. So the first one I've started already with the I don't know stories from 100 countries. Just visited my 100th country, which I was just
So
showing
cool.
Mark before. I bought a little flag. Some of you might recognize the flag.
Uh-huh.
It's from Uruguay. It was a really interesting city. And from there, I caught a ferry across to Buenos Aires, which
Okay.
is also a fascinating city. And um,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I got
No,
to,
I think
yeah,
that is so cool. I gotta go back. So, how did you and your wife meet when you were?
okay.
He was in Germany and you were down in Australia.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's a bit of a long story, but to cut it short, 2010 was my year of, I mean, we all have our disasters. And I
Oh
think we
yes.
shared
Oh
before on
yes.
a previous call about some of my previous things that went wrong in life. And 2010 was it was a sad year. Like I lost my mum
Oh,
at the start of the year, and then it just went downhill from there. So I was doing a business contract with someone, providing training to uh, entrepreneurs that were starting up things. So I had some government funding, and the person that I was partnered with there did a dirty on me and
oh,
cheated me out of a lot of money. And I'd
wow.
used up a lot of savings as well to relocate to a different part of Australia. Look, I learned a lot from that lesson, but
Yep.
yeah, it
Yeah.
left me without money and in debt.
Yeah.
Um,
That is.
that led into it was already a dysfunctional marriage.
Mhm.
No, no way else to kind of describe it. Um, which none of us have a perfect marriage, but
Yeah.
yeah, okay. So that ended up in a separation and divorce. Um, Mixed in there, we had my dad had a third of his lung removed from
Wow.
cancer.
Oh.
He'd been a big smoker in his younger days, and even though he quit, I think when he was around 40, and he hadn't smoked for over 30 years, I think it was.
Uh-huh.
Um, the damage had been done, and yeah,
Yeah.
he ended up with cancer and ended up losing him a couple of
Oh,
years later. So it was
oh,
kind of a time of grief and loss in
very
many
much.
different ways, like every aspect of my life. And I spent a good part of a month just in bed where my body just broke down and I just
Yeah.
could hardly lift my head from the pillow. So,
No. That,
um, yeah, just
it's just, yeah. It's
a
like
mess of
enough.
a year, but
Yeah.
the interesting thing about that whole year is at the end, I think this year was my 20th year where I've been doing um, like a process, like a goal setting process.
Okay.
And to start each year, I start out with asking myself 10 questions. The
Okay. I
first
like that.
three is what did I accomplish in the last 12 months? What were
Okay.
the highlights? What were the disappointments? And you always have a few. And then
Exactly.
looking back at those two lists, what lessons can you learn from the good and the bad?
Very
And
good.
so that year, 2010, at the end of the year, I was reflecting on the good and the bad and the ugly.
Sure. Yeah.
And I realized if I just looked at the list of things that the highlights that happened, it was my best year ever. And then
Uh-huh.
if I looked at the list of disappointments and failures, it was certainly like the worst year that I'd ever had. And I
Yeah.
thought, what? How can
Uh-huh.
you have your best year and your worst year at the same time?
Yeah.
And it was just, it was a real lesson for me that it depends on which list you focus on,
True.
is how
True.
your mindset can be. And so
Yes.
that'll be another book that I write, and I've got partly complete on the
Uh,
topic of gratitude, and
yeah.
just to focus
Yep.
on the good things and appreciate what you do have instead of only
Very
the
important.
list of what you don't have or what's going
Yes.
wrong at the
Yes.
moment.
Yeah.
Um,
Mindset is so it is, and it was kind of it was the worst of the times. It was the best of times for you. Kind of that. I mean, that just
yeah, yeah,
it is. I mean, what you focus on, it
yeah,
can be, and that sounded like that was quite the year. But I love that because so many people never get past or don't realize that. You know, they always focus on what they and that I love that what you do at the beginning of the year too. I got to start
yeah,
doing that because that is awesome. So
yeah. So now I'm kind of um, either once a week or at the end of usually at the end of a trip when I come
uh-huh.
home, I'll open up my Word document, and it's
Sure.
just a bullet list
Oh, okay, okay,
of highlights, everything that went good during the trip. And this time, just I made a detailed list this past time
cool.
of everything that went bad during the trip
Uh-huh.
because we only share the highlights on Facebook
Sure,
and
sure.
Instagram,
I can understand
and
that.
people see me standing on Machu Picchu or whatever.
Yeah.
But I thought it'd be interesting just at the end of this trip to actually show people behind the scenes and give them a glimpse of what actually things that went wrong. And there was a list, I got about 40 things on that list.
Oh wow.
Things
Oh,
like just flights that were delayed 24 hours
oh wow.
and then hotels that I'd turn up in Brazil and they'd overbooked and
Oh
and
wow.
ran
God.
next door to find a room for me in another hotel. And this is at 2 a.m. in the morning.
Oh,
So,
of course. Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
Oh.
So,
I, I think that's so important to show that side because I think people, when they just look at stuff that's on social media, everybody thinks it's like, well, I can't do that because everything, and it's like, oh, it is so much behind the scenes that
yeah,
you don't see that got you to, the point where, it is a journey. It is not a small journey. I mean, it's got its ups and downs, that's for sure.
yeah.
Um, and it does make you appreciate the ups but the downs a lot of times teach you a lot of things too. So
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I haven't actually analyzed the list yet. I need to print it out. But
uh-huh.
typically, I would look at the end of the year. I have a look through my disappointments,
Okay.
and I'll usually categorize them by with highlighting on the Word document in three different colors.
I
So
love that.
some of them, like it would have been something went wrong and it was clearly my fault. Like I should
Okay.
have organized it
Okay. Right. Uh-huh.
before time.
Uh-huh.
And then other times it's like the weather or things that you just can't
Yeah.
control.
Controllables. Yeah.
And then other things are just like, I don't know, random. It
Yeah.
happens to everyone kind of thing.
Life happens. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Very.
or it was someone else's problem, like the
Uh,
guy at the hotel. He just didn't check his
yeah. Yeah.
messages
Yeah.
properly,
Something
or the
just
change of
that.
the shift, the message didn't get through to the next guy. So that
Yeah.
was clearly not my fault. It wasn't the weather or external circumstance.
Yep.
It was clearly someone
Yep.
else to blame. But it's good to kind of look through
It
lists
is.
like that and see what you can I
Yes.
learn something to improve on my next
Exactly.
trip.
So, what got you started initially doing that?
Traveling.
Yeah. No, with making the list and doing that with you
Oh
seeing
yeah,
it.
yeah. So it was actually like an American lady called Ginny Ditzler, and she
Okay.
wrote a book called Best Year Yet. And I was introduced to her goal setting program, like I think I said 20 years ago.
Uh huh.
And it's basically just a list of 10 questions. And I've already shared the first three, which were
Okay.
what did you achieve? Were the disappointments? And what were the lessons? And so
Right.
I started off just doing the list at the end of the year. And
Okay.
so I might have like 40 great memories that I could remember from the year. and then about 20 disappointments or things that went bad.
Uh-huh.
And now I'm kind of updating the list all through the year. So I might actually get like usually over 300 things on the highlight list. Some of them might just be small, like I went
Sure.
to the cinema with my three
Uh-huh.
of my boys and we watched
Right. Yeah.
Batman Returns or something,
Uh-huh.
some, something like that. And others are highlights like, I don't know, I learned, well, this year I've been learning Spanish. And so if I got like up to a certain stage on Duolingo,
Mhm.
then I would record that, for example, as a highlight during the year. Yeah.
I love it. I mean, that is so good. I mean, you're so inspirational. I mean, I just so how okay going to the so how what started you traveling? I mean, what was the
Yep.
impetus there?
Yeah. So for traveling, I mean, I think up until the age of, I think it was 21, I'd
Okay.
only mostly just traveled within my state of
Okay.
Queensland, which is
Okay.
quite big.
Yes.
Like, I think this Australia, I have a big global map in front of me,
Uh-huh.
and the mass of Australia's land mass is quite huge. So
Hmm.
I don't know if it's as big as the USA, but it's close to that.
Okay.
And so, like, my state of, or where I'm from in Queensland, it's probably might be as big as 10 American states
Okay.
from the
Okay.
US.
Wow.
So I spent most of my life in the state of Queensland. And then 21, I was invited to, I was staying in the home of a young couple. At that time, I
Okay.
was living in Brisbane,
Mhm.
which is the capital of our state. And the family that I was boarding with a family that were thinking about being missionaries in Thailand.
Okay.
And uh, my friend David, who was wanting to do like a little trip across to Thailand just to check it out.
Sure.
And because they had like two young daughters and he wanted
Okay.
to kind of just see how would it work for a family with young kids.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so he invited me to join him and a few others. And so
Okay.
you can imagine this is back in 1988. So
Okay.
this is before the internet. Um, and back in those days, like there was diseases around that were killing people,
Mm.
like cholera, typhoid, for example,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, malaria and a lot of things like that. And
Huge.
because you
Huge.
didn't
Yeah.
have access to the internet, all of
Uh-huh.
these things were big and scary. And
Right. Yes.
um, I can remember like sitting down at restaurant tables and just scared to touch anything and hardly sit on the
Understand that
seat.
feeling. Yes.
And then by day three, I figured like I probably was not going to get killed by an invisible virus on a table. I was more
Yep.
likely to be run over by a scooter on the street.
Oh, I can believe
A
that actually.
motorbike
Yes.
scooter I'm talking about. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I mean, that is
So
so
that was my first trip. And that kind of
okay.
sparked something in me. And then it just started from there. But until 2010, I'd really only been to about 6 or 8 countries, and most of them were just in the north in Asia. So that was kind
Okay.
of the
Uh-huh.
playground for Australians. So I've
Uh-huh.
been to Thailand, I've been to India and Nepal and Malaysia, Singapore, those places. And then after the divorce in
Hmm.
2011, um, that's when my bigger travel journey started. So in 2010, I was recommended to go and watch this movie that was in the
Okay.
cinemas at the time called Eat, Pray and Love. I'm
Okay.
sure a lot of your listeners will have
Hmm.
heard of the movie or
Uh,
read the book or something by Elizabeth Gilbert. And yeah, so I watched the movie and I got to the cinema.
okay.
And after this recommendation, I look around and there's about half a dozen ladies. And I thought, oh, damn, I've been conned into watching a chick flick. And I thought, okay,
Uh,
look, I'm here now. Let's just watch this and have an open mind. And
uh,
it really touched me. So I just sat stunned at the end of the movie, just in the cinema, and thinking, well, what does all of this mean? And I thought, well, yeah, I've always felt happy when I was traveling in India and meet with my.
right.
I
Yeah.
stayed 6 months with an Indian family at one stage, and I really enjoyed that time. And I thought, yeah, why don't I go back to India for a couple of weeks and maybe just, who knows, I might get some
Yeah.
new revelation for my life.
Mhm.
And then the idea expanded, and I just thought, well, why don't I just visit all of my friends in any
Yeah, I
country?
love that. Yeah, that's so.
And yeah, took my friend Troy along for the ride. And
Uh-huh.
the idea was, let's stay with my friends throughout Asia and his friends, or some of his friends, when we get to Europe.
Sound like a win-win.
And
Yeah.
so we went through, I think, about 16 or 18 countries altogether in 4 month period, like a week, usually about a week in every country. And yeah, I think it changed both of our lives. And that's when I met my wife here in Germany and
Okay.
was introduced to her, and we kept in touch for a year on Skype once I got
Okay.
back to
Uh-huh.
Australia. And then when I felt I was ready to move on and pursue another relationship, because you have to you have to allow yourself some time to heal and
True.
process the
Yes.
grief of the past.
Yeah.
And I also learnt a lot of things too,
I can see that.
because I didn't want to. I got took on counselling.
Okay.
A beautiful man who'd been through a similar situation, and so that was a good experience because I didn't want to take any baggage on. If at that
Sure.
stage I
Yes.
was thinking, if
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
in another relationship down the track, I don't want
Hmm.
to. And if there's anything that I need to change personally, and there was, um, I want to deal with that now and
Yeah.
not have someone
Yes.
else unpack that for someone else
True.
in the
Yeah.
future. So it was a great learning experience. And if there's anyone out there listening to this and you've been through a similar situation, I can highly recommend get counselling as soon as you
Okay.
can, and be open to, hey, deal with uh, your weaknesses. And because yeah, you'll only take those to future
You will.
relationships.
Yeah. No, that's
And
that's great. Great.
yeah,
Great wisdom there. So that is. So.
yeah. So that was the start of my journey. So we did, I don't know, 16 countries in that trip, and then yeah, and being in Europe,
Uh-huh.
Germany, we're surrounded by, I think, 8 countries here.
Oh wow. I didn't know that. I
We've
guess.
got north of us, we have Denmark. We've
Uh-huh.
got the Netherlands and France to the the west of us. We've got
Okay.
Switzerland and Austria and Liechtenstein on the southern
Okay.
border, and we have Czech Republic. How am I doing? Czech Republic and Poland. Yeah, that's 8
Wow. I guess I didn't
on
know
in
that.
our eastern border. So it's very easy, kind of. I mean,
Yeah.
we got married in Denmark, so
Okay.
because of the less uh, bureaucracy.
Okay.
Um,
I know.
and then where we are here now, we're only a 2 hour drive from Prague. So we actually came back to Germany and had like a traditional church wedding here,
Okay.
and then across the border for a honeymoon in Prague. And then around that time, my visa was coming up, or I needed to renew my visa.
Hmm.
So we did a flight to London. So it was kind of like a four
Wow.
country tour,
Man,
just
that
that we
what a way.
did in those,
That's
in
awesome. I
those
mean,
2 weeks. So yeah, it's easy to
yeah,
clock up a few countries after a while, after living in Europe.
I would love that. I mean, that is, I mean, it's kind of like us going to the surrounding states in Nebraska, kind of like that. So, but I just never been to Germany. Denmark is where my family is originally from. So,
Okay, yep.
yeah.
Yeah,
But
Larson is a very
yes,
Danish
yes. Like my dad and I
surname.
looked about going back there, and he's like, "Wow, that language is difficult." So, I've never done that, but it would. I love travel. Best education is traveling, that's for sure. So, I would love to.
For sure.
And,
Yeah. I'm
and there
learning
are
something every time. Like,
yes.
I kind of figure that I've seen almost every variation, and then
Hmm.
I turn up to the next country and think, whoa, I've never seen that
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Just interesting.
It
Like
is.
Buenos Aires was the last big city that I was in, and it's just made around soccer. Just
Really? Okay.
the whole place feels like the soccer
Uh-huh.
mecca
I have
that
to.
you'd go there to watch soccer.
That
It
is
was
cool.
everywhere, like the flags, the jerseys, everyone's
Clearly,
selling them on the street,
that is
and that's
so
kind
cool.
of, it was unusual. I'd never seen anything like that.
I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to get a friend in Portugal who's from Canada who is 15-year-old trying to do soccer. I'll have to tell him that's where he needs to go next is from Portugal. He's in Lisbon,
yeah,
and actually he's invited us over there. So hopefully go and visit him sometime. But he eats. I mean, he just is soccer. Everything soccer. and
wow,
um, and I just he probably knows that already. I was not
yeah,
like that at 15, I can tell you that. So
okay.
so so this trip you just got back on, how do you plan your trips, or what? How do you just discover where you want to go next?
Yeah, so this time, like, I'm writing this travel memoir,
Okay,
and then I was so close to 100 countries. I thought, well, I'd love to do another trip.
right,
Um, and at the moment, I have one son, Daniel. He's 23. He's been traveling for the last, um, well, really 3 years. He's
wow,
been
okay,
traveling. So he saved up a heap of money just through
good,
working in restaurants in
okay,
Australia, and he invested it wisely. Invested in a
very
bit
good.
of crypto, and that's been earning him enough income that he hasn't needed to work for 3 years.
Oh
he's
wow,
he's 23. So at the moment, so he's been all through Europe, and he handles his expenses very well. So he's mostly staying in hostels, and
okay,
then he loves hiking. So he's quite often in the mountains and just
very
camping
nice.
in his tent.
Love that.
Loves that. Um, and he'd love to do something like the Pacific Coast Trail one day, or the Appalachian. He's that
Yes,
kind
yes,
of person,
right.
very physically fit.
I would love it.
And so he's been in Central America, and Mexico as well, since I think around February he started his journey.
Okay.
And then I said to him, "Well, when you get to Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
I'll come and connect with you. We'll
There you
spend
go.
a week together, and then I'll kind of branch off
Uh-huh.
because I've got a lot more restrictions on my time." And So I did all of Central America, which was quite easy. I did all of that overland as well, just through
Okay.
buses, which is kind of it allows you a different insight into a country. And
Oh,
I
I bet.
just love that kind of raw feeling of
Hmm.
crossing the borders and waiting
Yes.
for the guys to stamp your passport and
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
officially walking across the border. Um, it's a real buzz, and a lot of other travelers like me say the same thing.
I can see why. Yeah.
And then I said to him, "Well, when you get to Colombia, then I'll do the same. I'll come down and I want to do a couple of. I wanted to see the Amazon,
Sure.
the Machu Picchu,
Uh-huh.
and Iguazu Falls. So there were the three main goals.
Yes.
And then I wanted to just get a little taste of other countries as I was transiting through.
Yes.
And then I spent like a week with him in Colombia as well. So that kind of was the motivation and
Okay.
focus for this year.
Uh-huh.
And I did that, yeah, just combining it with seeing my son.
That
Um, I'm
very
heading
nice.
to Australia next month to visit my family. So
Very
I have
nice. Yeah.
seven beautiful children, six boys
Cool.
and one daughter, and
Uh-huh.
my daughter has four children. So
Ah,
I'm well and
that
truly
is
a
a yes.
grandfather.
Yes. Yes.
That's not likely to stop anytime soon. I'm probably going to
Uh-huh.
end up with 20 grandchildren in the next
Well,
10
that
years. I don't know.
that
But
would be
anyhow,
that's good.
so I'll
Uh,
visit them, and then one of my sons, my youngest, no, second youngest son, Caleb, will be coming back to Germany with me. And on the way, we'll visit Japan because that's
oh
one
wow.
place that he likes. And
Uh-huh.
so, quite often, when I've uh, planned in family trips back to Australia, I've
Hmm.
kind of picked airlines that stop in interesting places. So,
That's a good idea. I like
previous
that.
trip I stopped in Taiwan,
Okay.
and other trips I've stopped in Beijing and
Wow.
Hong Kong and different places. Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
I mean, so before you, is it hard to plan these trips out? I mean, how much time goes in beforehand? I would think that could be a lot of time maybe beforehand.
yeah. Sometimes, like the Central America thing, I kind of figured out the distances between the different countries and
Uh-huh.
worked out like, okay, I could get a bus from here and here. So I'm basically just pulling up Google Maps to do that
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
and figuring, okay, it's doable. It's quite in
Right.
my allotted uh, uh, thing. I think I did it in 6 weeks, that one. And I don't want to
Okay.
be away from my wife too long. So that
Hmm.
was kind of my limit.
Uh-huh.
And I kind of figured, yeah, I could do that pretty easy overland.
Sure.
And then just finding a cheap uh, airline pathway that works out. So I noticed that a lot of flights were going into Cancun as a popular
Right. Oh, yes.
holiday destination.
Yes.
And so there was a lot of flights in there. So I thought, okay, I'll fly in and out of there. That'll be my big hub.
Hmm.
Then
Okay.
I'll go overland all the way down to Panama City, and then a flight back to Cancun. So
Okay.
that was kind of an easy trip to plan out. And so I'll tend to book the main kind of in and out flights
Sure.
and then kind of have a rough idea of the pathway and the main things that I'd like to see at the time. So for that trip, I knew because I love to photograph wildlife.
Oh, yes.
And I'd heard that so many stories about Costa Rica. And
Oh,
so
me
that had
too.
been high on my bucket list for
Uh-huh.
ages. And I thought, I want to go to Monteverde up in the cloud forest
Uh-huh.
And seriously, it was just as magical as any blog
Wow.
article I'd ever read about it. Um, Fantastic. Actually, a photo just came up today on my phone
Uh-huh.
from, yeah, where was it? From the Monteverde
Okay.
cloud forest. They have
Uh-huh.
the bird there called the Quetzal, I think
Okay.
they pronounce it, but it's a bird with green. How would you explain it? Shiny green feathers and a
Okay, that's
huge long
interesting.
tail. That a
Oh,
tail
wow.
that's I think almost a meter. Or it might be like 30 centimeters, or it might be longer. Might
Wow.
be a meter long. The
That is
tail.
amazing.
Yeah, but just a stunning
Huh.
bird to watch fly.
Yeah.
And I was able to see a few of them. So that
Uh-huh.
was one of the highlights of that. And then I also had heard about Guatemala and the
Hmm.
being lots of volcanic activity. And
Right. Yes.
so I thought, well, I want to climb the
Yeah.
tallest volcano, of course.
Uh-huh.
And I'm 58 now, so almost
Okay.
58. in a in December I'll be 58. So I'm always thinking like, okay, am I racing against a body clock here?
Right here. Yeah.
Like when I'm into my 60s, am I still going to feel like climbing mountains and things? I don't
Yeah.
know. So,
Yeah.
and nothing really I saw with both of my parents, like, and also myself. I've had struggles with health. I got bitten by a tick. Um,
Oh,
was about 2017, I think it was,
okay.
and that put me in bed for almost 10 months with Lyme
Wow.
sickness. Yeah, Lyme disease. So it was. So I realized how fragile your health really is, and that nothing seems to be guaranteed. And so while I'm fit and healthy now, I want to do some of these big
Yes.
adventures while I
Yes.
still have the desire and
It,
so that was great. And I got to the top of the volcano and
uh-huh.
lived to tell the tale. It
I
was a
love.
strenuous hike, by the way. If
I
anyone's
can see that.
um, Asatango, I'm pronouncing it wrong. Someone's going to have to correct me. But it's the one of the bigger volcanoes
Okay.
in Guatemala,
Okay.
and you look down at Fuego, I think they just call it,
Okay.
um, which is erupts every 20 minutes.
Oh,
And through the
wow. Like,
night is just a stunning experience where you see the lava rolling down the sides of
wow.
the
And that
volcano.
up.
And I've got some photos on my Instagram account if people want to
I got to
see it.
check out your Instagram account. I can't even imagine what it must look like. I definitely got to check that out. So,
Yeah.
I
So
mean, so do
Smiley
you do?
Pete 01 is my main
Okay.
Instagram account that I'm posting to.
Very good.
And
So do you do a YouTube channel too?
no, not yet. I have been videoing stuff as I
Okay.
travel,
Okay.
and it's kind of one of those things that when I decide to slow down and have time, then I'll
Can do
pull
that.
some of these video clips
I
into
can definitely
something. So
understand that.
that's a project that I'm working on, but it does get pretty busy
I
jumping from one trip to
could see
planning
that.
the next one. So
So, so talking about the volcano, that reminded me of Yellowstone. Have you been to Yellowstone in the United States?
I
Yellowstone?
haven't. I was in the US for the first time early this
Okay.
year, but it was the end of winter. So a lot of
Uh,
those parks were closed.
yep.
So it's still on my bucket list
It's a good thing to have on your
to visit a lot of the parks in the West.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Yeah. No,
Yellowstone, and you have Yosemite, and
there's some
um, all of
really
those. I
cool
did
places out there.
I did get to visit the Grand Canyon
Oh, did you? Awesome.
earlier in the
Okay.
year, and it was bigger and grander than I was expecting. Like, it
Yeah.
really is something. Like, it
Yep.
is the showcase. I usually
That's
pick
its
one
name, the
photo.
Grand. Yeah.
Like,
So,
after a trip, I'll go through my photos and edit, and then I'll start posting them. And I usually try to pick one photo from
okay.
every that represents the best of my experiences in that country, and it's a bit of a challenge sometimes.
I see that.
And like places like the US are quite big. There's a whole
Yes.
range of experiences that I had, but I had to choose the Grand Canyon as my one
Yeah.
photo that
Definitely understand that.
represented like my favorite moment. Or yeah.
Yeah. No, and every place has something. I mean, and I'm sure you haven't been to Nebraska, but people dismiss Nebraska. But I think every place has something that is just amazing. It just,
Yeah.
I mean, Nebraska has the largest sand dunes in the Western Hemisphere, and it's covered
Really?
with grass. It's called our sand hills. But
Wow.
it is, if you want to see the stars, because it's rolling grass, but it had the water, the water table is right there, so it has these really pretty lakes, and
Wow.
it's I had really, and I've been in this state pretty much my whole life, hadn't been to that area until just a few years ago, and I kind of dismissed it as like just prairie, and it was different than any place I'd ever been. And then
Wow.
from the airplane, you can see the dunes underneath the grass, but it's just yeah, and that's people, which people say Nebraska's flat, which if you're going through on the interstate or on it is, but there's a lot of places it's not. So and then we are very fortunate having the one of the largest aquifers in the world, basically, especially in the United States. We have enough water in the state of Nebraska that would cover the whole state a mile deep, and we're very fortunate that we have that. But it's just like
Yeah.
everybody. It's like I want to go see every place because it's just like there's so many, and I can't wait for you to visit Yellowstone. That is like a place I have never been. I mean, that is like a different world.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
everybody's like, "Oh, faithful," but there's just so many other things that are just. Um, I've never been to a place that's been quite like that. So,
Wow.
so do you have a trip coming up, or are you planning another trip? I'm.
Well, I definitely would love to get back to the US, and you
Uh-huh.
have 50 states,
Yep.
all quite different, and like
Yes.
you were saying, like such a variety. And I
Yes.
think I've been to 8 or 10
Okay.
now.
Got a good start.
So I saw a little piece of, yeah,
Yep.
got as far as St. Louis and Kansas City,
Okay.
and it was the whole Super Bowl time,
Oh
so that
yes.
was
Yes.
interesting to see people with their yeah, the whole city decorated
Oh yes.
for
They very much get into that. That's for sure. So,
football
Kansas City
fever.
weren't too far from me. That's about 5.5 hours from me, so that's not
Yeah,
too bad.
and
But
then went to Nevada for and saw the canyon,
okay.
and that was amazing. Just that
Yeah.
was, I would think that that really tickled my
Uh huh.
um,
Yeah.
that
So
gets a
did.
double thumbs up. I just love the
So,
whole desert and
uh-huh.
cactus thing. Yeah, that just, I hadn't seen anything like that in any of my travels. Um,
No.
except
So did you go to
recently I
Las
was,
Vegas?
what's that?
Did you go
I
to Las
didn't
Vegas?
quite get, I had Vegas on my map,
That's
and
me too.
I was looking at, it was interesting. I was looking at booking.com
Uh-huh.
and just checking out accommodation. And I was thinking, what is this? It's like a
Uh-huh.
five-star hotel for something like $18. Like,
Yeah.
is this possible? And
Uh-huh.
then
Uh-huh.
and then I was thinking, there's got to be a catch, like, and it was
Yeah.
something like, I don't know, something, and it was combined with a casino,
Oh,
and I
yes,
was
yes.
thinking,
They
oh,
they need to
okay,
get you
they
there.
basically give you a free hotel room, and
Yep.
then hope you lose a heap of money, and then
But yeah,
yeah,
for sure.
they get, yeah, and
Um,
they'd probably be disappointed in me. I'm pretty disciplined, and I'd probably
you
just
do.
go in, sleep in
Yeah.
the room,
Yeah.
drink a glass of water or a cola, and,
They would
and
try.
walk
I mean,
past the. But I've
yeah.
heard that they give you so many dollars of free chips and that, and
Of
that
course,
gets you
yes.
hooked in the games and that. So, but I've got to check it out just out of interest.
It is. It is a city that you can just about find anything, and even stuff you didn't know existed. I mean, you go down the strip there, you will see it. You will see everything.
Yeah.
I've been to Vegas 4 times, and I didn't think I'd like it, and I do like it, and I don't gamble. And
Uh-huh.
it is. I'm ready to go back. It is definitely a different place than I had envisioned by a long, long ways because I thought I
Yeah.
would just like it greatly. And but
Yeah.
they do try to get you one way or the other. They try to get your money. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So they're very imaginative on that. So
Yeah.
so where's a place that you haven't traveled that you would really like to travel yet?
One place that I'd love to return to is Central Asia. So
Okay.
that's all of the stands. So
Uh
you
huh.
have like Kazakhstan, which I've been to,
Okay.
but you have Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan.
Wow.
Um, there's a few of
Uh
them.
huh.
So I've only been to Kazakhstan, and this is with my friend Troy in
Okay.
2011. We
Okay.
we took a train journey from
Ah,
Almaty
nice.
in Kazakhstan
Uh
all the
huh.
way up through to Moscow,
Oh, wow.
and took us 3.5 days,
Okay.
and had a bit of adventure on the it didn't quite go as planned. We got
Okay.
arrested on the border,
Oh,
and
wow. Wow.
and spent 24 hours in custody. Basically, had to go to
Wow.
like did a full court session with the judge, and
Oh my
she
gosh.
said, look, this crime has a penalty of 30 days because you've overstayed your visa. And
Wow.
then, because I had the business card of the embassy in Singapore, where we
Okay.
got the visas, and I explained the situation that when we got our visas in Singapore, and please, if you're listening from the Kazakhstan embassy, I don't want to get you. I don't want to bring up bad memories of
Uh-huh.
mistakes. But anyhow, like we we said to them, look, this is our tickets. We've got train tickets here,
Right.
a flight into the country,
Uh-huh.
train out of the country, but the date on our train ticket is, let's say, I don't know, the 30th.
Okay.
Um, and we won't, it takes two days to reach the border on the train. So we need
Okay.
the visa to cover us for those 2 extra days that were on the train.
Right.
And the guy at the embassy said, "No, no, that's not what we do here. We just give you the date that's on your ticket, like planes.
Okay.
Works great for planes, plane
Yeah,
ticket."
exactly. Yes. When you're
So when
wow.
we got to the Kazakhstan border, our visa was expired
Oh,
2 days
okay.
ago when we got on the train. And yeah, so anyhow, the judge said, "Look, I'll reduce the sentence to 24 to 1 day, and because you've been here almost 24 hours, you can get on the next train." So,
That was great. That was
yeah,
very great. Oh wow.
So we had to repurchase like a ticket, I think, for the next train that was coming through, which was from Kyrgyzstan, I think.
Okay.
And so we got to meet some beautiful people that were from
Cool.
Kyrgyzstan. And yeah, it just kind of gave us a glimpse into their culture and had
Yeah.
a wonderful time on the train.
I mean
But
that
these adventures happen.
what an adventure. Were you scared at all, or was it just when you
Um,
when they
I had, having lived in a place like India, you
okay.
kind of just see that like people in those areas, um, they just if you just step outside of the box or whatever,
Uh-huh.
there's just boxes that they just need to tick, and
Okay.
it's a very relaxed process, and they're just doing
Hmm.
their job.
Right.
And in the back of my head, I was kind of thinking, will we need to
Yeah.
pay a bribe or something here
Uh-huh.
to someone to, yeah, get in their favor? But no, we were never asked any bribe. They treated us very well,
Very good.
and we had a very memorable bowl of borscht, which
Oh,
is
there you go. Okay.
the
Awesome.
which, if
Super.
anyone's travelled through those areas, it's the standard meal. Um,
So do you like
and
that? You like borscht?
yeah,
I do too.
it was a fun and to set the scene, like uh, I'm from a part of Australia like Florida,
Uh-huh.
where you'd never get snow. So snow, the very first time really seen snow was in Kazakhstan. And so
Really?
by the
Okay.
time we got to the border, like there was like a couple of
Oh,
inches of
quite a bit
snow.
of snow.
So this
Okay.
was like, I couldn't wipe the smile off my face. I was just walking
Uh-huh.
around in the snow and catching the
Uh-huh. Safe to say
snowflakes.
thank you first time.
And so it was hard for me to feel stressed
Uh-huh.
about it. My friend Troy was a little bit more quieter and
Can understand
wondering
that.
how this was going to end up. Um, but I was just hoping that it was just going to be like a box ticking exercise, and that they'd kind of. I had the guy at the embassy's telephone number kind of as a backup that I
Right.
thought
Yeah.
will get us help us out of the situation. And so yeah, it was enough to
Wow.
pull us through.
That is amazing. So these are all in your books. How many books have you written?
Okay, yeah. So do I have a copy? Yeah, I might have a copy here with me. Uh, so yeah, here I have. That's my first book,
Okay.
Hunting Susan,
Okay.
and it's been getting really good reviews on Amazon. So you
Very
can
good.
get it as an ebook or order a print copy.
Okay.
Um, a friend in Miami just sent me a photo the other day where he had a print copy.
Very
So
nice.
yeah, so that was my first book, and a lot of the themes of grief and loss
Okay.
were in this
Mhm.
book. So
Okay.
a lot of my life experience from the disaster year, that all
Yeah.
came out. It was very therapeutic to write,
I can see
and
that.
I really put a lot of work into editing and crafting the book. I
Okay.
really I um, uh, learned lots. I read a heap about how to write a story
Sure.
because this is
Yeah. Yeah.
my
Especially
first
being the
novel,
first one.
and I thoroughly enjoyed the thing. And I do have a sequel to it that
Okay.
needs
Cool.
a little bit more work, but it's on the plans. And then the
Okay.
current one that I'm writing is my travel memoir, so
Nice.
it'll have my story about going through Kazakhstan and the border and the full an
Uh-huh.
unedited story. It'll share a little bit about how I met my wife and then a
Great.
few of the interesting experiences that I've had since then, climbing Kilimanjaro after recovering from the Lyme disease. So
Yeah. Wow.
how I still look back and think, how on earth did I actually do that? But
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
if you just keep putting one foot in front of the other, like it's amazing, like
It is.
how far you can go. And which is probably a nice message for you out there if you're
Yes.
going through a tough time right now. Um, uh, hey, just if you can get out of bed and just
Yep.
put one foot in front of the other, it
Exactly.
doesn't look like you're achieving much or
Yep.
doing anything at the time, but
Yep.
then next minute you're standing on the top of the mountain looking
Yep.
backwards and thinking, well, yeah, I've come a long way.
It
And
is.
that was kind of the experience that I had climbing Kilimanjaro. Was
I can't imagine.
it
I
was a
would love.
slow trip up there, but it doesn't matter if you need to get
Hmm.
pushed in a wheelchair, like
Yes.
it's the view at the top and the
Yeah. Yeah.
journey. The
Yes,
journey
it
and the
is. It is.
relationships. The guy who's pushing your chair, and yeah,
No,
uh,
and it is. It's kind of how you do anything. Like you say, one step, and there's always um, the things along the way that
yeah,
maybe at the time don't look so great, but you look back and it's like that's what got me to the top, of Kilimanjaro. And I mean, my gosh, I just yeah. So I got to ask before. So when you were growing up, I always ask what were your dreams when you were a kid? What did you want to be?
yeah. Interesting question. At one stage, I really wanted to be a private detective
Oh, I love
or
it.
join the police force. So I
Uh huh.
always had like a curious mind,
Okay.
and in fact, some of my friends even joked about me that I looked through every keyhole that I passed on the street, like
Uh huh. Uh huh.
just, just out of curiosity, which really is. And then when I got into coaching, I
Mm-hmm.
learned that that was all about knowing the right questions to ask.
True.
So I kind of did follow that path in a different way. Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's interesting, but how you have an interest in things as a child, and
Yep.
then it kind of just follows you. Like I
Yeah.
always, I always was interested in languages when I was a kid and did really well
Okay.
when I did language learning at school. And I actually learnt German and French in year 8,
Okay.
thinking I would never in my
Uh-huh.
lifetime ever
Uh-huh.
need it. And here I am
You never know.
living in Germany now.
You definitely never know. So I mean that is so neat. So you said coaching. What kind of coaching do you do?
Yeah, so I started off just helping people with their life goals,
Okay.
and I still do some of that as well. And then moved on to coaching businesses. So I had my first client actually. Uh, Actually, I went and did this course. I came back and I selected 10 friends and
Okay.
said, "Okay, you guys are going to be the guinea pigs. I've just done this course, and
Uh-huh.
I need to practice."
Right, right.
And after just 3 weeks, I had one of the people in that group, a beautiful lady. She
Okay.
said, "I've been in a pit of depression for 5 years,
Wow.
and you've completely changed my life." And I was just
Wow.
working through a very simple goal setting activity,
Right.
and encouraging her to challenge one of her phobias. And she
Okay.
did. And to my surprise, she came back and was dancing on my doorstep
Oh,
and saying, "Look,
awesome.
I've been in this pit of darkness." And then she went on and wrote a series of children's books and amazing, and became a leader in the community. And yeah, just really transformed. And then I thought, "Whoa, look!" And then I got my first paid client, beautiful lady, and she said, "Look, I just need some help and encouragement with communication skills in the workplace."
Uh-huh.
And after, I think we were meeting once a week for the first month, and then every second week.
Okay.
And I don't know, I think it was only after 6 weeks that her boss called her into the office and said, "Look, we're all talking about you. We've noticed such a change
Mm-hmm.
in your life. Like, what's
Uh-huh.
your secret? What are you doing for personal
Uh-huh.
development?" And she said, "Oh, I've got this life coach."
Uh-huh.
And they said, "Well, bring him into us. Where's this coach?"
Yeah. Go.
And so that became my first team building workshop that I did for
Uh-huh.
the company. And yeah, and then just kind of built on from there. One thing snowballed to another. She said, "Look, my
Wow.
husband's ready to quit his business. Can you help him?" And I thought, well, I'm just new in business myself, but look,
Uh,
send him along and let's
right.
see.
Yeah.
And after just 6 weeks, his business had increased 500%, which
Whoa.
sounds a lot, but he wasn't earning a lot in the
It's
start.
still.
But it basically meant that he was on a
Yeah.
survivable income
Yeah.
at the end of just 6 weeks.
Which is really,
And
really quickly.
so I just, after a
Wow.
few weeks, I just thought, look, this coaching really does work.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and then and I've taught, I don't know, like over 100 people. I've taught coaching skills to as well. Some groups like to learn the
Very
coaching
nice.
skills. During COVID, I did it online as well. I had an
Sure.
online course teaching coaching, and I used to always tell people that the the coaching was just like a secret formula. And
Uh-huh.
then the longer I was in coaching, now I kind of shake my head and say, no, there's no
Uh-huh.
secret formula in coaching. Like, literally, the coach really is the
True.
secret. If you
Yes.
have a positive mindset,
Yes.
um, then it doesn't matter what kind of formula like you're using. Like,
Yes.
it's going to be contagious. People are going to
Yes. Yes.
start having confidence in themselves.
Exactly.
And but it's got to be authentic. And yeah,
Amen.
I guess I've always had that attitude that I've always been able to see the potential um, in
Which is
people,
yeah. That's a very
and
good
even with my children as well. And that's maybe why they've done so well in life as well, because I've
yeah.
always raised
Um,
them to think and dream big, and
and that's a gift
the
too.
sky's the limit. And
Yes.
yes, you do have to knuckle down and do some
You do. Yes.
work,
Yep. Yep.
but you need people that to encourage you and believe in you at times.
Very, very much.
Yeah.
No, it is. It
So
is.
happy to talk to anyone out there listening that would love
Okay.
to a bit of encouragement
Yeah.
for yourself. I still love to do coaching. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. I was just asking how people got a hold of you, and that's awesome. So, is there any place like links or anything that they can get a hold of you, or do you like on Facebook or anything like that, or
Yeah,
just kind
look,
of
they can write to me personally. I'll give you my email address is petesworldtour at
okay?
gmail.com.
Okay.
So Pete's World Tour at gmail.com, and I'm happy to chat with
Thank you.
anyone. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. No, I mean that is, and you're motivational. I mean, I can see why people, I just so before we end the podcast, so what other things would you like the audience to know before we end?
Uh, Great question. Uh, I think because I've just been to my 100th country, like traveling's much safer than you really.
Really?
Uh, it really is much
Okay.
safer than you might believe. And I mean, you still have to be careful anywhere. Even in my own neighborhood, I'm not going to kind of
Sure, I know
walk
what you
out
mean.
of the
Yeah.
street after
Yes.
midnight. But if you just take basic precautions, and I
Yes.
remember having a conversation with my son, and we both came up to with the same conclusion, like that if you're not going to nightclubs and doing drugs and
Yeah.
or anything a bit sketchy
Yes.
um, after midnight, then usually
Yep.
like you're not going to be too bad um, in
No.
most countries. Most countries,
And
yeah.
I can believe that. So
Yeah.
yeah, you
So
do. I
that's
mean that.
one thing about traveling and life in general. Like, just appreciate what you have and what you can do instead of what you haven't got or what you can't do.
True.
And
Very
yet you
true.
see these movies all the time, like of people in like wheelchairs or have some
Yes.
kind of um, challenge that they overcome. I follow a lot of these people on Instagram, and just like
Amazing.
I've got two working legs, and
Yes.
other people are walking around and
Yeah.
uh, with plastic legs
Yeah.
and not without any complaint. And yeah, sure, it's
Oh,
hard. Sometimes they face challenges,
yep.
but they choose to see the bright side of life. And I would encourage, I have a lot of people out there. Whenever I'm speaking, I always encourage people to have some kind of gratitude process, whether
Yes.
it's a
Yes.
list or whether you're just going through your photos at the end
Yes.
of every week, just appreciating the
All the
highlights, some of the special moments in your life.
yes. Yeah. It,
Um,
it it does come down to being grateful and the gratitude, like you say. That is for sure.
yeah,
So and because I know what you mean. You see some of those people on there. I mean, it is amazing what they get accomplished, and they're so happy, and then you see other people and mindset. It is very much so. So, talking about your pictures, do you do a podcast yourself?
yeah, I've got a podcast called Goals and Gratitude. I haven't
Okay.
done any episodes recently, but if
Okay.
anyone's interested, they can go and listen to, I think there's about 8 episodes there, and
Okay.
they'll get like really some of the core lessons that I've learned over 20 years about the topic of gratitude. Yeah. So I'm wanting
Nice.
to write a
Very
book on the topic, but really you'll get the meat
okay.
uh, of what I've learned about gratitude just
Very
in the
important.
if you listen. I think there's a few interviews that I do with people as well that I think it's episode 1 or 2 you'll get some good information on
Okay.
gratitude.
I have to check that out myself.
Yeah.
So do you do a blog, or I mean, do you do anything like that with your travels?
Not really blogging at the moment, but I mean people can follow me on Facebook.
Okay. Okay.
Just Peter Sewell, they'll see a picture of me. I think yeah, I don't know, they'll see some picture of me, and maybe I
Okay.
think it's,
Okay. I'll
yeah,
check that too.
they can follow me there. And I'm usually pretty good. Yeah, I'll usually upload photos and
Yes.
share a little bit about photos there, and trying to be disciplined There's that word again. I've used it twice on this podcast.
Yeah, there is something to discipline.
Trying to
Yeah,
be disciplined in
yeah,
always posting them on Instagram. But
yeah.
yeah,
I know what you
as
mean there
well.
too.
So you'll get me on there.
And after I was following your trip, you got done with. I wanted to. I couldn't wait to see where you were at next. I love
Yeah.
that you shared there. So and your books. I mean, so where can they find those on Amazon or?
Yep, I haven't. So yeah, Amazon, you'll definitely find Hunting Season.
Okay, okay,
So it's a thriller.
okay,
I wouldn't call it overly violent or anything like that. So it's a family friendly
okay.
thriller, I would call.
Yes,
You can find that, and yeah, if they follow me along on Facebook or Instagram, I'll post updates when I
perfect.
publish my travel memoir.
Perfect. I love that. I mean, we got to keep in touch. And
And if there happens to be anyone out there that wants to organize some kind of a book tour or host me, I would love to do a book tour
nice.
in the US.
Awesome. I mean that, and then if you ever come to Nebraska, you're welcome to stay here. So,
Sounds good.
Nebraska, yes. No, Nebraska's good. So, well, Peter, thanks for being on the Dreamcatcher podcast. I mean, I look forward to seeing what you're doing next,
Yeah,
and this has been great. I knew the other day when we talked, I was looking forward to this podcast greatly, and then. I would just like to be in your backpack or whatever on one of your trips too. I mean, it's just, oh my gosh. I mean, I love traveling, but I've just barely scratched the surface. I
yeah,
mean, I've been to Italy, which was good, but I got a long ways to go before 100 countries. Oh gosh, I love that. So, but on that, I will end. Thanks again, Peter, and maybe we'll do a follow up podcast down the line.
yeah. I've really enjoyed the conversation and love hearing your podcast interviews as well.
Thank you.
So
I appreciate that.
keep at it. You're doing great work.
Thank you, Peter. I will do that definitely. So, well, on that, enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll talk soon.
See you, mate.